I'm going to speak now in a verse from the Bhagavad Gita, and I'm going to pass this little notebook around, and please feel free to write down any questions which you may have during the lecture. My general experience is sometimes people are a little shy when it comes time for the questions. So I use this technique a lot when I travel. So anything you'd like to ask about the philosophy as we go on, or something practical about what the members of the Hare Krishna movement do? This will be going around for the next 30 minutes. We'd like to speak this evening from the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. As I was mentioning earlier, Bhagavad Gita is one of the scriptures from India. And Bhagavad in Sanskrit means the original person, God, and Gita means song. So this is the song or the poem of the Lord. This is from the 7th chapter, entitled Knowledge of the Absolute. This is text number 3. I'll read the Sanskrit. Manushyanam sahasreshu krischid yatati siddhaye yatanam abhisiddhanam kaschim mam veti tattvataha. The translation is as follows. Out of many thousands amongst men, one may endeavor for perfection. And of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. And what follows is a short commentary by our spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada. Purport. There are various grades of men, and out of many thousands, one may be sufficiently interested in transcendental realization to try to know what is the self, what is the body, and what is the absolute truth. Generally, mankind is simply engaged in the animal propensities of eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. And hardly anyone is interested in transcendental knowledge. The first 6 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita are meant for those who are interested in transcendental knowledge, in understanding the self, the super-self, and the process of realization by yoga and discrimination of the self from matter. However, Krishna can be known only by persons who are in Krishna consciousness. Other transcendentalists may achieve impersonal Brahman realization, but this is easier than understanding Krishna. Krishna is the Supreme Person, but at the same time is beyond the knowledge of Brahman and Paramatma. The yogis and jnanis are confused in their attempts to try to understand Krishna. Although the greatest of the impersonalists, Sripad Shankaracharya, has admitted in his Gita commentary that Krishna is the absolute truth, his followers have a difficult time accepting him as such. For it is very difficult to understand the absolute truth, even though one may have partial understanding of him as the impersonal Brahman. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, the primeval Lord Govinda. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakar Nakarana. It is very difficult to realize him as the absolute truth. Although non-devotees declare that the path of bhakti or devotional service is very easy, they cannot practice it. If the path of bhakti is so easy as the non-devotee class of men proclaim, then why do they take up the difficult path? Actually, the path of bhakti is not easy. The so-called path of bhakti practiced by unauthorized persons without knowledge of bhakti may be easy, but when it is practiced factually according to the rules and regulations, the speculative scholars and philosophers fall away from the path. Om Agyan Timanandasya Ginam Gina Shalakaya Chakshuran Militam Jena Tasmaya Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadavayam Dadanti Svavadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So in this verse of the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord is stating that out of many thousands of men, perhaps one may endeavor for perfection, and those who have achieved perfection, hardly one actually understands him in truth. So we find this true, particularly in the age in which we live. 99.9% of the population is engaged in the pursuit of material affairs. What does that mean? That means, practically speaking, the propensities of animal life. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. If you look to animal society, or any species of life for that matter, the Vedas declare that there are 8,400,000 species of life. Our modern scientists have discovered some of these, but not all of these. But the Vedas, which contain perfect knowledge, explain that there are 8,400,000 species of life. And the basic activity of these various species of life is accumulating food, eating, sleeping, finding some shelter, some protection, mating, social life, and defense measures. This is the basic activity within animal society, within this material world. However, what distinguishes human society from animal society is that we have advanced intelligence. This is the difference. So we should not preoccupy ourselves with these basic activities, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. But we should understand that the human form of life carries with it a higher responsibility because we have this extra added feature of higher intelligence. Man is sometimes called a rational animal, isn't it? At least in school, we studied this in sociology class. Man is called a rational. He's an animal nonetheless, but he's a rational animal in that he can use his higher intelligence to ask questions which cats and dogs cannot ask. Who am I? Where have I come from? Where am I going? What happens at the moment of death? Is there an absolute truth? Is there God? Is there not God? So if we don't use this extra added facility to question, why am I suffering in this world? How to become free from suffering? Then at least the Vedas put us on par with the animals. This is a strong statement, to call someone an animal. But we have to judge something by its activities. So actually, along with meeting the basic demands of this body, we have to eat, we have to sleep, we have to make, we have to defend. We're not denying this. The Vedas don't deny this. But they say that the balance of our time should be engaged in the pursuit of self-realization. There was one great king, he appeared many thousands of years ago. Although modern scientists say that people were barbaric in those times, this is to be debated. If people are not more barbaric in these days by fighting world wars than they were thousands of years ago when people were living very peacefully and very simply. Anyway, this great king, thousands of years ago, he said, Nayam deho deha bhajamni loke kastankar arate vidbhujamye. He was speaking to his 100 sons. He had a large family. He said, my dear sons, out of all the living entities who have achieved bodies in this creation, one who has been awarded this human form of life should not chase after those same pleasures which are available to vidbhujamye. Vidbhujamye in Sanskrit means the village animals. Just like here out in the country, you have the opportunity to live closer to nature. So you have sheep and cows and horses and dogs and things like this in the towns. So King Rishabhdev is saying that the human being should not pursue the same activities, the same pleasures which are afforded to the vidbhujamye, to the animals. But one should tapodivyamyena putta sadhyam. One should practice some type of spiritual path, some type of spiritual realization to obtain a higher pleasure, which is eternal, which is unending. And one should not misuse the human form of life to chase after the same pleasures available to lower species of life, like cats and dogs. If one does so, one takes the risk of losing this valuable opportunity. Actually, King Rishabhdev says that this human form of life is awarded to us by the Lord for this purpose of self-realization. After transmigrating through 8,400,000 species of life, one comes to the human form. This is called samsara. Samsara means the wheel of birth and death, just like you see in a casino. I don't think you have those in these countries. A casino turns, the dial goes around and it lands somewhere. So the living entity is like on this wheel of samsara. You see it sometimes in Indian pictures, this wheel of birth and death. Brahmanda Brahmati Kaun Bhagavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasad Payi Bhakti Lata Beach. In his pursuit of happiness within the material creation, the living entity is going from one form of life to another, from one universe to another. But by great fortune, one comes to the human form of life. It's like the key to get out of the wheel of samsara. It is like a special key whereby you can liberate yourself from the repetition of birth and death, the miseries of material life, and return to the original world, the spiritual world. This is the key. Now, after transmigrating through so many species of life, one comes to the human form. One has this extra added responsibility that is not used, then is taken away. Just like in some business corporation, let's say, someone is working on a big computer, and somebody else is sweeping the floor. Now one man, he has a broom, and the other guy has a computer. Now why does one man have more facility than the other? Because he has a more important responsibility. Now, if he fools around, he doesn't get down to his business, on the computer, then the boss is going to come along and say, look, you're not doing your job. Now you take the broom, you sweep the floor, and let the other guy come up here and try to do what you're doing. So this is one of the laws of nature. Of course, we don't read about this in science books, but it's not that scientists have discovered everything. The more subtle laws of nature are described in revealed scriptures like Bhagavad Gita, the Upanishads, the Srimad Bhagavatam, etc. And there it's said that according to this law of karma, this law of nature, if this facility of human form of life is not utilized properly, then one is again set down to lower species of life. Now someone may question that you're saying that animals are spirit souls like you and me. But yes, this is the verdict of the Vedic literature. Vidya vinaya sampane ramani gapi hastani sunichaiva sapakicha pandita samadarshana. That a truly learned person, an enlightened person, he sees with equal vision a brahmana, which means a human being, an elephant, a cow, a dog, and a dog eater. He actually sees with equal vision. He doesn't discriminate. Here's a black man, here's a white man, here's a yellow man. Here's a kid, here's an old person. Or here's a human being, and here's an animal. He treats all living entities equal. He doesn't see one as higher or one as lower. One as being better or one as being inferior. He has the actual vision of equality. So actually he can be friendly towards everyone. So this is very important. He does not only see human beings equally, but he sees animals. So a devotee of the Lord with this vision, just like I think in Christian history there's St. Francis of Assisi. St. Francis of Assisi, he's very much appreciated by certain people because he actually loved the animals, he loved the birds, he didn't mistreat any creature. So this is actual spiritual vision, to be able to see the spiritual identity of every living being. So one who misuses that human form of life, that opportunity may be taken away, and he may have to fall down into inferior species of life. So although we don't discriminate, at the same time we realize that the animal form of life, there's no hope for self-realization. It's covered by the darkness of ignorance. Although some people may say, how do you know dogs don't speak about God? How do you know cats don't meditate? But again, we judge something by the action. So basically, 100% of the time, eating, sleeping, meditating. So this human form of life is rarely achieved. And it is a golden opportunity for understanding our actual eternal self. We are actually strangers in a strange land. The Bhagavad Gita describes, as I was mentioning earlier, that we are not this body, but that we are the soul within the body. But unfortunately, due to our association with this material energy from time immemorial, we have lost this understanding that we are spirit soul. But actually this body is simply a dress on the soul. Just like now you are wearing a coat or a shirt or a dress or whatever. So in the evening, when you go back home, you'll take that dress off and you put on some pajamas to take rest. So in the same way, we are constantly changing these bodies, even in this lifetime. Someone may question the validity of reincarnation. Who's come back to tell us what actually happens? Do you know anyone who's come back and said that I actually reincarnated? So generally people accept the philosophy that at the moment of death everything is finished, because they only see with these eyes. But these eyes are very imperfect. What can you see? You can't even see beyond this wall. So what to speak, seeing such profound things as what happens after death. So to see, we have to see to the eyes of Scripture, revealed Scripture, which is given by the Lord and realized devotees. So there is explained that at death, everything is not finished. It's a new beginning. Actually, our lives are like many chapters in a big book. We've just come from South Africa, and in South Africa, everybody in the country has to keep what they call a book of life. And in this book of life, whether you're a black man or a white man, everyone has to keep a book of life. So in this book of life, any change of residence is recorded. This is the South African government. You can't move an inch without their knowing what you're doing, like to control everybody, exploit everyone. So if you move even to the house next door, you have to record it in the book of life. And you have to take it down to the station. They have to stamp it and invite their approval. If you move from one state to another, everything is recorded. So there's different pages. So in the same way, if we could look at our book of life, we would see that there's many chapters. Not only this chapter of life, that we're from New Zealand or from America, and we live in a particular town or a particular village or whatever the case may be. But you would see many chapters, many lifetimes in this book, because we're constantly changing our bodies according to our different desires. This body is temporary, but the soul is eternal. We can actually make a small experiment to understand how we are not the body. For example, if everyone looked at their right hand, look at your right, this is the experiment, look at your right hand. So now, you're looking at your right hand, and identify that hand. This is my hand. And you go a little bit farther up, there's a forearm, and you say, this is my forearm. Then, this is my shoulder, this is my torso, this is my leg. We go through all the parts of the body. Now, what is happening? We are identifying with this body. If you think that you are the body, that you are material, then you would say, I hand, I forearm, I shoulder, I torso, I leg, I head. We don't say that. Even linguistically, we can find knowledge of absolute truth. Even in our own language, we don't have to search very far. The absolute truth is very near and very far away as well. So we can see, just in this linguistic experiment, that my hand, now wait a minute, I thought I am the hand. If you ask a common man, who are you? Right here, I am, right here. This is me. Okay, but you're telling me it's your hand, it's your arm, it's your leg, it's your body. But who are you? Who is the person who's identifying with this particular body? Now this is just basic mathematics and the science and so forth, but you see how ignorant we are. Unfortunately, we have very little education in the Western countries of the difference between matter and spirit. We're brought up in a culture where we're trained to think that we are this body, and the goal of life is material enjoyment. This is how we're trained. But a little spiritual mathematics, we can understand, actually I'm not the body. I'm the consciousness within the body. I'm the living force which gives life to this particular body. That is the actual, they call in Sanskrit, the Atma, or the self. Just like, what is the difference between a living body and a dead body? Sometimes we see people who just drop dead, natural death, they die. All the bodily parts are there. What has actually happened? What has transpired? One moment a person is living and the next minute the body is inactive. Well, I'll give you a very simple analogy. It's something like somebody driving their car, stopping their car and getting out and walking away. The car is simply a machine. And without the presence of the conscious driver, the machine cannot work. So in the same way, this body is nothing more than a very complicated, very sophisticated, subtle machine. If you think about it. In university we learned that there's 700 bones, there's something like 2,000 muscles, there's 300 bones, 700 muscles, and 2,800 kilometers of blood vessels. With a little skin, some hairs, some fingernails all put together in a form. Now my question is that you? Are you 300 bones, 700 muscles, and 2,800 kilometers of blood vessels? Is that who we really think we are? Now modern science will tell us that through chemical evolution life has come about, so therefore we are chemicals. We're nothing more than chemicals. The interaction of these chemicals is expressing different emotions and different feelings. But an intelligent man will question, am I simply nothing more than a chemical evolution? And if you actually think about it, they've never proved this theory. Everyone is accepting, well not everyone, but many people are accepting that life is simply material phenomena. But they've never taken chemicals and produced life. They've never done it. They've never proven this theory that life comes from matter. And actually never will. Because according to Bhagavad Gita, life is eternal. That's why in Krishna consciousness, we don't support abortion. Because we understand that at the moment of conception, it's not that life is created, but rather a little environment is made for the spirit soul to enter into. And that spirit soul has just left one body, is entering into another opportunity for another body. At the moment of conception, that's what happens. Life is actually eternal. So whether we go from the human form of life or to the animal form of life, the point is that we are changing our bodies. So the body is temporary and the soul is eternal. This means actually that the soul is more important than the body. Just like no matter how expensive your car is, the driver is much more important than the car, isn't it? You may have a very expensive car, but are you going to sacrifice the driver for the car? If worse comes to worse, you're going to sacrifice the car for the driver because the driver is more important. So we place so much emphasis on this body, but we neglect the soul which is in the body. Neglect means we fail to understand who the soul really is. If you don't know who you really are, how are you going to understand what can really make you happy? In the Vedas there's a story of the bird in the cage. I'll just tell it briefly. It helps make the point more clear. Well, I'll make it simple. The point was that someone purchased a bird in the cage at a store. And they took that bird in the cage home, but they were so enamored by the cage, they forgot to identify the bird in the cage. So when they took the whole thing home, they polished the cage every day and shined it very nicely. Had beautiful gems on it. It was made of silver and gold, and polishing and cleaning. The person's neighbor came over regularly and said, "My, what a beautiful bird you have." "Oh, you mean my cage?" "Oh yes, thank you very much, it's very nice." "No, I mean the bird inside, but the bird's looking a little thin. Don't you feed the bird?" "Oh, my cage? Yes, I polish my cage regularly every day." So this went on for some time. The neighbor was coming and saying, "What about the bird?" But the person could only see the cage. So therefore, eventually what happened? The bird died. So of course the soul can't die. The bird actually represents the soul. The bird can't die. But die means in the sense that we lose this opportunity. We become so enamored with the body. We become very enamored with that, whatever's reflecting there in the mirror. And we forget that actually the body is simply dead matter. simply dead matter. And it is only appearing to be alive because of the presence of the conscious soul. So, understanding we are spiritual and not material, we should only accept the bare necessities of life to keep this body healthy for the purpose of self-realization. That is called simple living with high thinking. That is the nature of a transcendentalist. He doesn't deny this body, but he sees it as an actual tool for self-realization. He goes on with his various duties, his various material responsibilities, but side by side, he's cultivating transcendental knowledge. He is in no illusion about the actual nature of this materialistic life. Actually, we want to enjoy this body, but if you think about it, this body is not made for enjoyment. We're trying to enjoy because enjoyment is natural. It's natural to enjoy, because the nature of the soul is that it wants to enjoy eternal pleasure. We're simply looking in the wrong place. Now think about this body. Take, again, the hand. Now, there's many ways that this hand can suffer. You can snap, you can hit a hammer on it, you can put it in fire, you can put it in freezing water, you can scrape the skin. I mean, you name it. There's many, many ways that this hand can feel uncomfortable. How many ways are there that this hand can enjoy? I mean, maybe after the pain you can put some balm on it. You know. But isn't it a fact that any part of the body, there's many ways that it can suffer, but how many ways are there it can enjoy? So this is my point. This body is not actually meant for pleasure. Actually, this material world is a place of suffering. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, from the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery, where repeated birth and death take place. So these are concomitant factors of material existence. No matter how wealthy you are, no matter how beautiful you are, no matter how educated you are, no matter whatever you have going for you in the material world, you can't stop these factors of material existence. Birth, death, old age, and disease. Some people try it, but you can't, because that's the nature of this world. It's not the nature of the spiritual world, but it's the nature of this world. One time, I remember some years ago, Walt Disney, he was extremely wealthy, of course, and he wanted to survive the death experience. So he came down with some type of cancer, I forget what type, he had some type of cancer beginning. So this is actual fact, this is history. So he made an arrangement with the doctors in Los Angeles, in America, that they would freeze his body to a certain stage where the cells would no longer grow. It would be a type of animation where he just barely, life was there. They would freeze him until medical science discovered the cure for his disease. This is what he wanted. He thought he could conquer death like this. So actually Walt Disney was his body temperature was, we wouldn't call it frozen, but they cooled his body down to very, 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 yogis can do this in India. This is why yogis can live so long. The metabolism in the body practically becomes non-existent, just a low, like a pilot light, so to speak. So these yogis can sit in the Himalayas and they breathe once every day or something. Because there's practically no activity. And this way yogis can live for 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600 years. We've actually seen it, the Kumbh Mela. The Kumbh Mela is the largest spiritual gathering on this earth. In one day only, 30 million people come to bathe in the Ganges. We were at this festival in Prayag 2 years ago. 30 million people. It's a very profound spiritual event. And there you can see yogis who are hundreds of years old. Now these are very saintly persons. They don't have any reason to tell lies or fool people. You ask them their age. Oh, I'm 300 years old. Nice to meet you, sir. You're 300 years old. He looks like a 12-year-old boy. 14-year-old boy. So you may doubt this, but India has many wonders. There are many amazing things you can see in India. This is one, that yogis can control their life air in such a way they can live a very long time. So Walt Disney tried this in an artificial way. They froze his body. So many years went by, and of course, no one's found a cure for cancer yet. So time was going on. The problem was that the relatives were getting a little bit anxious because he had a will, and many of his relatives were mentioned in his will. They were going to get big benefits like this. So this is actual fact. They went to court and they fought over this will. They said, this is simply not fair. Keeping us waiting for so many years, let's pull the plug. And this is what happened. They got the rights to pull the plug and they unfroze Walt. And old Disney died. The shock of being unfrozen, etc. So, but it's not unnatural to want to live forever. It's not unnatural to want to have full knowledge. It's not unnatural to want to be always blissful. My point is that we're making an effort in the wrong place, this material existence. Rather, we should turn our attention to the spiritual path, where we can learn how to live in such a way that we can actually transcend this material world at the moment of death and return to our original position in the spiritual world. There is a spiritual world, far beyond this material world. There is Krishna, there is the Lord, and there are the living entities, and they're all engaged in eternal devotional service in their original spiritual forms. Right now, we're like fish out of water. Just like in your country, you have beautiful streams. We were driving here, we're seeing how most of the lakes and streams are not polluted. There's big, healthy fish living in there. Let us take some fish from the local stream and bring him here and put him on the stage. We're going to do the best we can for him. Get him a nice seat, Mr. Fish. Sit him down there. We get the most beautiful woman in the room, and she can come sit in the lap of the fish, if you please. Then we get the fish, nice Mercedes car, some nice Ray-Ban sunglasses, nice Havana cigar. What else is there? A few different things. We can give that fish. We can give him the best of everything. But will that fish actually be happy? No? Who said that? A smart little girl. You can speak after me. So, no, but why? After a while, that fish will begin to suffocate because he's a creature of the water. He's not a creature of the land. So in the same way, we are not creatures of this material world. We are creatures of the spiritual world. Now, when something starts to go wrong, we can understand it's not natural. In other words, when the fish begins to suffocate and suffer, that means it's not natural, so we have to put him back in his natural environment. So the fact that we have to undergo so many inconveniences in this material existence is a simple proof that it's not natural. Just like many people want to return to a more natural, simple way of life. We're frustrated with, polluted skies and polluted water and crowded cities. We want a more natural, simple way of life. So our humble presentation is that to return to that natural, simple way of life perfectly and completely, you have to be liberated from this material world and return to your natural situation in the spiritual world. That is the science of self-realization. Now, how to do that? Well, that's why we have books like Bhagavad Gita. Because we're like lost sheep, very appropriate example. In your country you have many sheep, so sometimes the sheep get lost, and then the herdsman, he goes to look for them. So in the same way, Krishna comes to this material world, as I was saying before, yada yada hi dharmasya. Sometimes he sends a son, sometimes he sends a representative, sometimes he empowers a particular living entity, and all of them turn our attention to that spiritual path, to lead us back home, back to Godhead. Now each of them prescribe a particular medicine because we're all in disease condition. Disease condition means that we're an illusion. We think with this body, we think the purpose of life is in true enjoyment. We have no understanding of what is death. We're born into ignorance, like a disease condition. We're suffering. So a particular medicine is given. Now in each age that the creation goes through, there's a different process of spiritual enlightenment. The first age that this creation goes through is called Satya Yuga, the age of enlightenment, the golden age. And in that age, the process was meditation. The next age which commenced was Treta Yuga. And in that age, there was what we call Agnihotras, or fire sacrifices. Then there was temple worship. But in this age in which we live in now, a particular antidote for material consciousness has been prescribed. And that we were doing earlier. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is the antidote for material consciousness. We're all in material consciousness to varying degrees, otherwise we wouldn't be here. We have these material bodies, which is a sign of our ignorance, that we've taken on this temporary material body, when in fact we're a spirit soul. So what is the antidote for that material consciousness? The holy name of Krishna. Now, at least in Vedic medicine, Indian medicine, along with a medicine, you have to have a good diet as well. You change your diet. Actually, if you go to a good doctor, if you go to a lousy doctor, he gives you some medicine, but he doesn't tell you to change your diet. A lot of our health depends on what we eat, isn't it? You are what you eat. So people who want a healthy body, wholesome foods, like grains and milk products and fruits and vegetables, a healthy life. Yeah. So along with the medicine, you have to have a good diet. So in the same way, the medicine for this age is chanting transcendental sound vibration, Hare Krishna. And the diet is Krishna Prasadam. In a few moments you're going to have some of that. Krishna Prasadam is vegetarian food which is offered to the Lord. It becomes spiritual. Just like iron, when it's put into fire, it takes on the qualities of fire. So food which is prepared and offered to the Supreme Lord, because he accepts that food, he accepts that loving devotion of his devotee, that food takes on spiritual qualities. So even if you can't chant Hare Krishna, even if you can't accept all this philosophy, I've seen a lot of faces out there in the last half hour, even if you can't accept all this philosophy, nevertheless, you can eat your way back to God. That's why everyone ultimately likes this movement. You don't have to shave your head. You can keep that mustache and that handsome beard. You can keep all that. You don't have to shave up, be a monk, renounce the world. You just learn how to eat nice vegetarian. I imagine most of you are vegetarian. Like a vegetarian crowd. I hope you are. Because meat eating is full of bad karma. So, but being vegetarian is not enough. Many times we're challenged because of course we're vegetarians. So I'm always saying, don't eat meat, don't kill living things. So then somebody asks, any questions? Somebody with a big smile on their face, I got the Swami now. You say we shouldn't kill things, but you kill plants. According to your philosophy, the plants are also life. You said 8,400,000 species of life, and you said plants are also living. So you kill plants. You're a hypocrite. I get it every time. But no, because we have to eat something. Jivo jivasa jivana. One living entity is food for another. So we try to minimize the act of violence. Certainly there's so much difference between cutting the throat of a cow or a sheep and pulling a cauliflower out of there with a potato or picking an apple. Of course, it is violence, but it's not on the same level as causing extreme pain to an animal which is more advanced on the evolutionary cycle of spiritual existence. So we try to minimize it, but it is a fact. It's not enough to be vegetarian. There's still karma. Karma means for every action there's a reaction. There's still karma involved in killing plants. So we have to eat, but we should eat according to the direction of the Supreme who has created life. That is Krishna. Krishna has created life. So he allows for human society to take their foodstuffs from the vegetable kingdom, plants, these fruits, grains, vegetables, milk products, etc. We can have our food, that's a karma-free. If we offer that food to the Supreme, it becomes free from the ill effect of killing even a plant. So this is a perfect diet, a karma-free diet. You can live healthy materially and healthy spiritually. And because that food is transformed by association of the Supreme in that offering, it becomes spirit. You can just eat and become self-realized. Of course, as you make more progress, you may want to do other things as well, like chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare. You may even want to follow some of the disciplinary activities that we do. Here comes the shocker. No meat eating, no intoxication, that means no marijuana, no cigarettes, no coffee, no tea. No illicit sex, which means sex outside of marriage, and no gambling. I was giving a lecture recently at the University of Stellenbosch in Cape Town, South Africa. Very heavy place. You're a very mild audience. These students are all in support of apartheid. Up in Natal, they're against apartheid. But in Stellenbosch, they're Afrikaners. They do not like the black man. So they are very fanatic, speaking in their language. It was very hard for them to accept anything I was speaking about, especially when not this body, because that meant the black man was equal to them, and they didn't want to hear that. So it was a very tough audience. So at the end I said, spiritual life means discipline. You can't just do anything and everything and expect to realize the absolute truth. Even if you go to university, you have to go through so much, austerity. So you have to study, stay back Friday night, Saturday night, don't go to the ball game, to get your homework done, to pass the test, to go through it. So I said, if to realize the most profound subject, which is self-realization, there must also be some austerities involved. You can't just do anything and everything. It's not as easy as taking a pill or reading a book to realize God. So I said, here's the basic rules you have to follow. No meat eating, no intoxication, no illicit sex, no gambling. Whoa, the whole room exploded. One girl stood up and she said, what's left? If there's no meat, there's no intoxication, no sex, she said. No gambling, what's left? I said, ma'am, that's the beginning. When you give those things up, those things are actually the roots which attaches to material life. Like a tree has roots. These things are the roots. Meat eating, bad karma. Intoxication puts us more in the bodily concept of life. Sex life. Sex life means that we can have sex life, but sex life is meant for producing children. And when we introduce contraception and things like this is artificial. And the proof is that there's so much risk involved, especially nowadays. AIDS, venereal disease, unwanted children, that's called vanishing, unwanted children, aborted children. There's so many karmic activities as a result when this activity is not used properly. And gambling, wasting hard-earned money in frivolous activity. So, these are some of the rules and regulations which one may eventually want to incorporate in his life in order to understand self-realization. But even if in the beginning one can't practice any of these rules and regulations that one finds in revealed scriptures, even if it's a long way off, you can make rapid progress to that point, or rapid progress in the spiritual life, just by chanting regularly this Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. In other words, there's a special concession made in this age. Previously, yogis would have to undergo great austerities and penances. People would have to become very scholarly, read many books, but we can't do that in this age. It's not possible. So therefore, a special concession is made. Don't give anything up in the beginning, but simply add this positive aspect of the Maha Mantra. Again, mantra means a sound which frees us from the material conception, and Maha means great. So we guarantee, we're only passing through here for a day or two, but we guarantee that if you chant this mantra regularly, you try it a little bit in the morning, on your way to work, or in the evening, you chant, you'll see gradually that you'll become self-realized. You'll actually realize these truths which we have been speaking this evening. Right now it's just philosophy. It's hard to sit on a hard floor for an hour. I've got a soft cushion up here. It's hard to listen for an hour to philosophy, you can actually realize these points, how you're not this body, how you're a spirit soul, how you're part and parcel of the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, and how to experience an eternal life full of bliss and knowledge. Gradually, if you chant regularly every day, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So thank you very much. You listened very patiently. I'll answer a few questions. Got quite a lot of. And then we have a play. Do we have a play tonight? Huh? Okay, we have a feast. Okay, we have a nice feast. Is not the principle of God worship not to worship material things? Good question. That's the same question I asked the devotees the first day I met them. If you're so spiritual, why are you wearing a watch? Why are you driving in a car? Why are you using a microphone? Good question. But actually we understand that everything belongs to Krishna. Nothing belongs to us. And real spiritual life means to recognize God as the supreme proprietor. That doesn't mean it's spiritual consciousness. To recognize the original source of everything, which is God. And to realize everything belongs to Him. And if we use everything in His service, that is the definition of spiritual. Nothing is separate from Krishna. Nothing is separate from God. So if something is used in God's service, it's considered spiritual. And if something is used for my own sense gratification, that's the definition of material. So actually all these things that we're using are not for our own sense gratification. Rather, they're in the service of Krishna. For instance, we have lots of vehicles out there. If we didn't have these vehicles, we couldn't travel and teach people this process of bhakti yoga. We might, be able to walk and cover the country in a few generations. Because there's a great need and a great desire, people have a great desire to understand spiritual knowledge, we utilize these facilities. Microphones, cars, etc. So matter, material things are neither good nor bad, it's how you use it. Matter itself is not good or bad, just like a knife. A knife, it's not good or bad inherently. You put it in the hands of a thief, then it's dangerous. But you put the same knife in the hands of an expert surgeon, he can cut out some bad infection in your body. So it's the purpose behind it that actually counts. So material things, everything can be used actually in God's service if one is very expert and is trained properly. So the principle is not the principle of God worship, not to worship material things. We don't worship material things, but we utilize them as part of God's energy in His service. Where does caring fit into the basic pursuance of beings? Is it a spiritual practice to care for each other and other beings, raise children, learn about, can't get that word, in the creation and the spiritual laws? So where does caring fit into the basic nature of things? Well, Krishna consciousness has been described as the highest welfare activity. Many people are sensitive to the suffering of others and they want to help. But unless we actually know what the real disease is, we can only offer temporary relief from the problems. Like if you go to a doctor, again, now if the doctor is not very expert, You have different symptoms. You have a headache, you have a fever, you've got a rash. So he can try to cure each one of those individually. Give you something for the headache, try to cure the fever, cure the rash. But if he's really expert, he'll know that the symptoms are actually indicative of one particular disease. Generally, you find that. If there's one disease in the body, it may manifest different symptoms. So simply to cure the symptom without curing the disease, this is not real health. So the ultimate disease of the living entity is forgetfulness of God. And because we have forgotten God, we've got these material bodies with all their various problems. So the best way to alleviate suffering is to enlighten people in Krishna consciousness. Teach them to act on the spiritual platform, whereby they don't create karma, which is the source of suffering. Simply to give people food to the starving, or to give medicine to the sick, or shelter to the homeless. That's okay, that's good. But higher welfare, higher caring, is to give them perfect knowledge where they can lead perfect lives and leave this material world altogether. So actually we really care for people. And that's why we're traveling around this island, giving people Krishna consciousness. We care for them. We don't actually see that anyone's any better off than anyone else. Someone may be very healthy, and someone may be sick. Everybody has to die at one point. Everyone has to grow old. Everyone has to get deceased. So the best way you can help people is to give them spiritual knowledge. Now simultaneously, you can accomplish the other thing also. Like for instance, the food that we eat. I was mentioning how this food is spiritual. And it gives a person spiritual benefit. But obviously it also feeds the body. So sometimes this movement is called the kitchen religion. Because we distribute so much prasadam all over the world. Recently at a festival in South Africa, we did a festival in Durban. 200,000 people came to our festival. It was remarkable, because in South Africa, up until recently, you couldn't have a gathering of more than 3 people on the street because of the apartheid laws. It's very politically very dangerous down there. So not more than 3 people can gather at one time. But we got special permission from the government. We went to meet the government minister. We said, look, this is a spiritual festival. It's not political. There's going to be no problems. Come on, give us a break. And we gave him some sweet balls, something to eat. As soon as he ate that food, oh, okay, you got permission. Here you go. So we had a festival which is revolutionary in South Africa. 200,000 people came. Whites, blacks, Indians, coloreds. The newspapers just couldn't believe it. Front page coverage everywhere. Peaceful festival called a spiritual revolution. It was very peaceful. Everyone was living very happily together. And we distributed 75,000 plates of food. I mean, you know, we don't give little things. We give these. You'll see tonight. We give a nice plate with rice, vegetables, and sweets, and curries, and everything, sweet drinks. 75. We had 200 pots cooking at one time. Big pots, big as this stand here, and fires on open fire. 200 pots at one time. And a lot of these people were really hungry, especially the poor men. They were hungry. So we were feeding the poor. At the same time, we were giving them prasadam. We were stopping the temporary problem of being hungry, but we were also stopping the deeper problem of being in ignorance of the self. So we accomplished 2 things. So if we really care for someone, we don't want to just blow on the boil. In India, sometimes in India we get boils. And not little pimples, I mean boils, you know. So, many things you can get in India. So, you know, the boils, it's painful, so you go, oh, it's better now. Oh, it's good. What you really have to do, you have to go to the doctor, cut it open, take all the infection out, sew it up, okay, go home now. So it's not enough to simply blow on the boil of material life. Give a little food, give some medicine, give some shelter. That's good. But we have to go deeper than that. Remove the ignorance whereby we're in this world altogether. It's only temporary. Even if they cure cancer, there's going to be some other disease that comes. If they cure AIDS, there's going to be another disease that comes. This is the material world. So the best way to really care for someone is to understand What's the problem? That you have to learn Bhagavad Gita. Whoever wrote, this is a good question. It shows a very sensitive, caring person. But my point is, if you really want to know how to care for people and help them, then study Bhagavad Gita. Learn who they are and why they're entangled in this material world, and teach them this science. Number 3, here's a tough question. Why the funny haircuts? That's so deep, I don't know if I can get into that. Well, you didn't know? This is the new style all over the world. You're so isolated in this little country town. You don't know that down there in Christchurch and up there in Auckland, everybody's like this. They're all wearing robes. No, seriously, shaving the head enables us to become free from the bodily concept of life. Again, our philosophy is we're not the body. So anything which can help us reduce the intoxication of being in the bodily concept of life, we accept that. So, shaving the head, because, you know, we often judge our beauty by our hair. You know, what shape it's in, how long it is, how short it is, where the curl is once considered ugly or beautiful. But if the soul wasn't in the body, it wouldn't make any difference anyway, would it? I mean, a beautiful woman, she dies, you're going to pick her up and dance with her? Oh my darling. Beautiful hair is there, you know. So, it's not the hair, it's the soul. So we cut our hair like that to help us become, because it's, especially the hair, you know, but when you cut it and go to the barbershop, it falls on the floor, we put it away. When it's on the head, it has some kind of fascination. But it's not the real beauty. But we're very much enchanted, so we cut the hair like that to free ourselves from the bodily concept. It's also very clean. And traditionally, it's the sign of a monk in all religions. In India, the yogis, they often shave. I think in Christian church also, sometimes the priests, they shave their hair. So it frees us from the bodily concept of life. And we keep this little, in the back here, you see it on the boards? The back's called a sika. That distinguishes us from other classes of transcendentalists in India, because in India there's different spiritual philosophies. So there's basically 2. That the absolute truth is a person, and the absolute truth is just an energy. All is love. So we advocate that the absolute truth has personal qualities. He's a transcendental spiritual personality, Krishna. So to distinguish ourselves from those who don't accept God personality, we keep this. Sometimes they say that at the moment of death, Krishna can come and he can pull you back to God. So some of you also have in the back a nice little As a woman, I am feeling more and more strongly as I listen to you that even your spiritual world is completely filled with men. When are you speakers, males it always seems, going to speak to us as equals, see us as equals, and change your attitudes? Include women in your explanations. It's time words that we use to communicate include everyone, not just speak of and to men. Well, please don't take offense. We're not speaking like that. When we say man, we're just speaking about society in general. We're speaking of society. When we say mankind, this means human society, which consists of men and women. We don't distinguish. Actually, you see in our Krishna conscious society that the men and women actually do the same activities together. And women in Krishna consciousness are not exploited. In the material world, we quite often find that women are exploited. But in Krishna consciousness, women are given equal opportunity to advance in spiritual life. Let me just take it one step further. We were in San Francisco one time, and our spiritual master was speaking, and a similar question arose. It's basically a misunderstanding. And one lady stood up in the audience and said, "But what about women's liberation?" Meaning the women's liberation movement. What do you feel about the women's liberation movement? Why just the men? Why not the ladies? So our spiritual master, who had no real knowledge of the women's liberation movement, he said, "What is the problem?" He said, "Everyone in Krishna consciousness, man and women, they're liberated. So we see, as I mentioned earlier, Vidya Vinaya Sambhane Brahmani Gavya Hastani. We see the spiritual equality of every living entity. But materially, men and women are not equal. They have different natures. Those natures can complement each other. That is the beauty of living in a spiritual community. The differences don't work against each other, but the differences work together. Just like in my body, I have a hand, and I have a foot, and I have a head, and I have a stomach. Now you can't say it's all equal, because the stomach doesn't do the work of the hand. And the hand doesn't do the work of the knee. They're different. But because they have one common goal, which is perhaps to walk forward, they all cooperate very nicely, each doing their particular service. So according to one's nature, according to one's constitution, one can serve God. In a man's body, in a woman's body, in a child's body, in an old person's body. In the eyes of God, everyone has equal opportunity to advance in spiritual life. So we don't distinguish like that.
Well, if you do feel that way, why then do you have a problem about mentioning women when you talk?
But I told you, I'm just...
Sometimes you mentioned women this evening, we're using them as a beautiful thing. You spoke for 25 minutes or longer and then suddenly talked about a beautiful woman and bring her up.
To turn a fish on.
It's not good
It's a real old age mentality. Well, the man sit on the floor and the woman work in the kitchen.
Okay, next time I'll use the example. We'll have a man sit on her lap.
It's every time when you talk that we are as much part of this there.
See, but you missed the whole point of the lecture, man. You missed the whole point of the lecture. The whole point of the lecture is that you're not that body. You're not a woman. This is just what I was trying to enlighten you with.
We're people. We're people. We're not man and woman. We're just
Exactly.
people all on this earth.
Your spirit soul.
Your language is so sexist. It's quite off-putting.
But there is a difference between men and women, isn't there?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
We're all people.
So we're using...
We're both enlightening each other here. We're not saying respect people.
No, but I'm saying understand who you actually are, as spirit soul. That's my point. And then there's no problem. If you actually understand who you are, that you're a spirit soul, you're not a man, and she's not a woman, and I'm not a man, and she's not a child, this is the point of the lecture. Perhaps the language...
People are male and female, you start giving...
Well, people are male and female. I mean, people are male and female.
We're all people in soul.
Right.
And you don't have to divide. Because the moment you divide male and female, you're dividing everything.
Well, you also divide. I mean, there are certain activities that a woman does and certain activities that a man does. So you do those, so you also distinguish. You can't say you don't distinguish, you know. When you go to the bathroom, you go to the men's room, and the ladies go to the women's room, and when you buy clothes, you go to the men's shop and she goes to the women's shop. So these differences are there. But I'm saying these differences in spiritual life can complement each other when everyone serves the Supreme Lord. Excuse me?
I think perhaps you missed the point in this case, and you said earlier that there was a point that we missed, that we are not this material reality, that we are all equal in men and women's bodies. But you also mentioned earlier that God can distinguish between people, animals, flowers. God went for a walk. They were all people. It's like, hello flower, hello bird. And you, in your way of speaking, when you said that language and semantics is very important, with my hand, you don't acknowledge that women exist equally in this world that you're trying to care for and give messages to. It seems that you speak only to men. You do not give that acknowledgement.
But that's your misunderstanding. Otherwise, why would I? I'm addressing the whole audience here equally. I'm not addressing just the men. I'm also addressing the women.
But cannot you see that when you say him and he and man, that it leaves a lot of people out?
It'd be very difficult to say, you know, he, she all the time. We're not going to change the English language in order to change the English language in order to suit your bodily concept of life. I'm speaking on the absolute. You're making a fool of yourself because you're identifying with the material body. I'm saying you're not a woman and you're not man. You're spirit soul. So act on that platform.
There's heaps of words.
Material world now.
Yeah.
Right.
the material world. It's just coming as a plea. You listen to black people that say, this is how we feel. We're saying as women, this is how we feel about it. And it's time to change things so that we feel that we can be part of everything instead of constantly pushed aside and not recognize.
Ask any of our women, you speak to a woman here and see, you ask them. I'm the man, so you're always going to think it's biased. After the lecture, you sit down and speak with our ladies, and you see if they feel that they're being, this type of consciousness is there. All right?
I think they're going to say. It's always going to be following you around.
They're not following me around. They're following Krishna. My point is you've missed the, because you identify with the body, you've missed the message. Yes, you've missed the message that you are not the body. And everyone, the ladies, the men, they, we, all have equal opportunity to advance. Is that okay? We all have equal opportunity to advance.
I hope you do it forever. I really hope you do.
I am, but you're making the distinction unnecessary. So let me continue. Another one. As a man, I agree the world is full of people, not men. The ultimate result of intense yoga brings around and enlivens certain psychic facilities. Do you have people within your movement who display siddhi powers such as spiritual healing? Are devotees realizing telepathic communion of mind as a means of communication? So we were speaking earlier that there are certain yogis and yoginis, who develop spiritual powers as a result of advancing in spiritual life. So, in Krishna consciousness, we're not so concerned with these mystic powers. Because even in the material science, many of these powers have been realized. For instance, yogis can fly in the sky. They can transport themselves very quickly from one place to another, etc. So, the bhakti yogis, or the yogi who's interested in developing his love for the Supreme Lord, he doesn't consider these particular powers very interesting. Sometimes in India you see certain yogis who can manifest gold or watches or things like this. So our spiritual master was once asked, what is the miracle that you were doing? So our spiritual master explained, the miracle that I am doing is I am changing these boys and girls from the bodily concept of life to the spiritual concept of life. This is also a very profound thing. In the Vedas there's a statement that one can change bell metal into gold by a certain chemical process. That's very amazing. But no less amazing is it that one can transform material consciousness into spiritual consciousness. So we consider this more important than trying to develop mystic powers, to actually awaken our love for
Could I
God.
explain? I wasn't actually asking you to, I was saying that that was important. I was trying to emphasise the fact that are there people amongst your movement who have the spiritual abilities for positive healing and growth within your movement that can...
You mean spiritual healing?
Yeah, I'm talking about
Yeah.
I'm talking about the light, the energy.
Not particularly.
Do you feel communion of a psychic way? Like, do you need to use your voices to talk to one another? That's what I'm asking. Like,
Yes, we
how
do.
elevated is your consciousness really? Do you really communicate?
Well, we don't consider that necessarily elevated consciousness means you can be telepathic.
No, sure, but surely if your consciousness was elevated to a higher state, you would have no needs to use words to communicate what you're directing at me right now. You would obviously just send me the energy of the love that you're trying to convey.
Well, it's not that words are inferior.
If you are not...
It's not that words are an
If you're
inferior...
communicating with
Well, let me answer your question.
your astral body.
It's not that words are an inferior way of communication.
No.
If those words are material, that's one thing. But if the words become spiritual, talking about transcendental subject matter, That's actually the most elevated consciousness. Material consciousness means to talk about material things 24 hours a day. But spiritual consciousness means to glorify the Lord, His activities, His devotees, etc. So that type of communication we're always doing. We consider that to be the highest form of consciousness.
So, but before, you pointed out that we are spirit soul. Therefore, if you are recognizing yourself, perceiving yourself as spirit soul, surely you cannot connect with your spirit souls without having to use the physical bodies as vessels for your form of communication.
Well, now we're in the material body, so we use the facility of the body to perform spiritual activities.
Yes, but couldn't you not recognize that it may be possible for you to enter out of your physical body and communicate without the physical body?
And you can do that, yes?
Yes.
There's more subtle bodies.
Sure. And that's what I really was asking about.
Yeah, like astral traveling.
Yes, how often do you indulge in these?
We don't. Because we consider also, astral plane is also a subtle material plane. You have the gross body, and you also have the subtle body. Gross body means this body, subtle body means mind, intelligence, ego. So one can also travel on the astral plane, but it's still within the material realm. So we transcend the material realm altogether to the spiritual body.
Do you believe it's possible for a person to travel through spiritual realms in their spiritual body while they're still incarnated on the planet?
Very, very advanced souls can do that. Very advanced souls can do that. But they're very, very rare. Not the ordinary transcendentals. Can I go on? Does this Krishna movement acknowledge the validity of other paths leading to spiritual truth? Yes, we do. I was mentioning that earlier. That according to time and circumstance, the Lord enlightens human society. Just like even in the Bible, Jesus says, I have more to teach you, but you cannot bear the truth. So Lord Jesus spoke spiritual knowledge. He spoke about love of God. But many things he was not able to say because his audience was not ready to hear it. We can see even what he did speak, it was difficult for people to accept, and many people rejected him, even some people killed him. So according to time and circumstance, the Lord may reveal. But we accept that Krishna consciousness is the ultimate conclusion in spiritual knowledge. Meaning, if you have $100, you also have $75, $60, $50. It doesn't mean you deny those things. So we don't deny other spiritual paths, but we say that the culmination is Krishna consciousness, because in Krishna consciousness one has full realization of the Lord and his various energies, etc. Okay, we'll stop there. We'll finish with the kirtan, and then we'll take prasad. If you have any more questions, then